Air Force world. I believe by now you're probably on your second tour on the old Treble One Squadron, yes?
Yes, I had a wonderful tour on 6th Squadron, the flying can openers as they were called because of their wartime experience when going against tanks in the Middle East, North Africa. Wonderful time all around, absolutely. And when I got the news that I was going to be posted to the sister squadron at the time, which was the other end of the hangar, that was 54 Squadron, but they were going to be renamed, forming Treble One Squadron in the air defense role. And I was absolutely devastated because I loved the low-level weaponeering environment and I knew relatively little about air defense. And I thought, this doesn't get any worse. I wasn't a terribly happy chap, I guess. But anyway, one has to make the best of these things, and on we went. And I discovered that air defense, actually, there was a lot more to it than I realized as an outside observer, if you will. And holding, of course, quick readiness alert, QRA was a big part of the air defense world. And then the squadron moved from Coningsby up to Lucas in Fife in Scotland. And I vividly remember that day taking off from Coningsby, heading out over the North Sea to do the mission in typical Lincolnshire weather, low cloud-based drizzle and all the rest. Finished the mission, and then instead of pointing back to Coningsby, pointed towards Lucas, let down, and just scattered cumulus clouds, 50 kilometers visibility, whatever. I thought, wow, I can cope with this. It was a very pleasant contrast. And of course, let down into Lucas, and we set up our squadron there at Lucas, yeah.
Yeah, that must have been the one day in the year it wasn't raining at Lucas. So the Phantom in the air defense role, quite different. And you were now on QRA and protecting us against Soviet intrusions. What was it like when you did your first Soviet intercept? And did they all go very smoothly?
I can't specifically remember the first one, but rather impressions about QRA missions in general, I guess. We operated a long way north. We're right up there getting close to Iceland. And of course, naturally, we have air-to-air refueling support coming up from the southern tanker base. So they would be launched first and we would blast out and intercept what was usually the Soviet Bear aircraft on their way south of Iceland, around the top of the UK, Northern Ireland, and around all the way down to a base in West Africa. Many of the Soviet crews were fairly friendly. They didn't really mind us doing what we had to do. But occasionally you got a crew who really didn't want us there at all. But on the friendly side, I do recall a picture in the Daily Telegraph once in the UK showing zoomed in on the tail turret of this bear with a Soviet holding up a Coke bottle. Smile. That was the friendly side. But the nasty side, and both day and night, I remember by day, you'd be sitting there off the wingtip relatively close, and they knew that the F4 was going to be heavy. You've got full 3-tank fit. You've got the Sparrow Skyflash radar directed missiles. You've got sidewinders. So the low speed handling isn't going to be brilliant. They knew that. So they would slow right down and you'd be slowing down with them. And then having slowed down, they would turn towards you just to make life really interesting. And then take you right down at slow speed through cloud, all the way down to pretty well the wave tops. So that was all quite challenging. And at night, our intelligence people wanted the numbers on individual airframes. And in order to get that, one had to come in directly underneath the aircraft and close up in the vertical to get close enough for the backseater, the navigator, to grab his torch and illuminate where the number was and copy down the details before dropping back down again. And the Soviets knew exactly how close you had to get in order to get the number. So just before you got to that point, they had this nothing, you could only describe it as a searchlight. and they just switch that on right into your eyes. So you, from your full night vision that you had acclimatized, suddenly this searchlight is shone into you, and you could only do one thing, and that is just push the nose down and get away. So that was the other not so nice side.
Yeah, they had a few tricks like that, didn't they? Yeah, mind you, I found that a little bit of reheat was sufficient to illuminate the bottom of the aircraft if the torch wasn't strong enough. So you were at Lucas, and the gliding might not have been quite so easy out there for you, was it?
I would say that's an understatement. I did I was an instructor. I did a lot of instructing. Thermal cross-country flying, fundamentally, one could consider as not existing. So the soaring was utilizing the two other forms of lift. There were two. This is at Port Moke, which wasn't that far inland, really, from Lucas. And there was two hills, Bonarty and the Bishop. And depending on the direction of the wind, you just went over to one of those two hills and you soared up and down on the hills, and you could only get to a certain maximum altitude. So that basically was that type of lift. You had to have the wind blowing of sufficient strength. But the other type of lift, which is the more interesting one, is called wave lift. And when the atmospheric conditions are right and wind is blowing across hills, you get a mirror effect carrying on further up into the atmosphere. And the best way to describe that is like a river when the water flow separates around a submerged rock. You get that little ripple effect, which is mirrored downstream. And that's, if you put that into the vertical, essentially that's what's happening. So it's possible to get quite high using wave lift. The lift is characterized, unlike thermals, which can be quite turbulent. Wave lift is silky, silky smooth. And you just have the instrument showing you that you're climbing quite well. And I've been up to, I got my diamond height, which is an altitude gain of 5,000 meters from the low point. I got to around about 29,000 feet. That's the highest I got over Scotland.
Wow.
So you're getting very cold. And the bunny suit that we used to use on the F4 when we went off up to Iceland under the immersion suit, I actually used the bunny suit when I was going wave flying because it was wonderful and kept you really quite warm. So you had problems about keeping warm enough in the cockpit. You had problems about the cooling that took place. And as you descended, you had to be careful about misting canopies with the safety implications, all of that sort of thing. But wave lift is fascinating, and around the world, astonishing things have been done. There is a research glider called the Perlan, and it's called that because of a particular type of wave which occurs way, 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 way up out there. And they're using it to gain all sorts of scientific data. British Aerospace has been involved with this project. The fuselage is, of course, pressurized. And they've actually got already to just over 76,000 feet in this machine.
Good Lord.
It is astonishing.
That's remarkable. But sadly, your preparation for what was going to be your first World Championship attempt wasn't ideal. But there you were. It was 1976 now, and you're heading off for the 15th World Championships back in Finland. It must have been exciting, but I guess you were pretty nervous as well.
It was so far from being an ideal preparation. It wasn't funny, Nick, it really was. I was very hungry, certainly, and we did have the practice period. Although the Worlds themselves, as I said earlier, was around about 2 weeks, there's also practice, good, solid practice week before that. And the weather was reasonably good, so I managed to get quite a bit of flying. And an interesting thing that came out of that practice period was that I learned something more about myself and something that needed to change before day one on the big event. And that is, again, I started trying too hard and being too aggressive. I guess trying to prove myself or whatever, and ending up low down and having to scrabble out in less than ideal lift and watching the hot shots cruise along overhead in a relaxed mode. you know, and I came to my senses and thought, no, I've just got to back off here and fly more intelligently. So I managed to get up to speed before day one. I did indicate that on the pre-World's year in 1975, the weather was brilliant. Well, of course, when the big event came along, the weather was anything but brilliant. And we had 2 or 3 reasonable racing days, but overall, nothing like the previous year, absolutely nothing, which was disappointing. But we certainly got enough contest days and enough of a mix of weather to very, very definitely make it a valid contest. One memory that sticks in, well, 2 memories, I suppose. One flight, the rules in those days actually allowed one, if you were to have the misfortune of landing out, within a certain time frame, you could actually de-rig the glider, put it in its trailer, get back to the airfield, put it all together and actually launch again and go again on the task. And which was actually a crazy rule, but it was there. And I had a real problem on this particular day where I ended up with rain and watered instruments, and I ended up landing out. The crew were there right on top very quickly. We took the glider apart in the field, put it in the trailer, broke every Finnish speed limit through Finnish country roads, rushed back onto the airfield. The other members of the British team, the ground members, were all there standing there ready, waiting, screeched to a halt. I got out and just walked away completely, just let them get at it. The glider went together in record time. The ASW-17 that I was flying is not known for its ease of rigging, but that was very impressive. A little bit tape put on for the junctions between the wing components. I was thrown in, map followed me, canopy shut, rope attached, up slack, and away I went. And it worked out quite well. I think I ended up sort of 8th for that day. Certainly I was in the top 10. And
I'm curious. So you've got so many days of competitions. If you just have one bad day and do really badly, is it possible to catch up, or is that the competition more or less finished for you?
Generally, if one has a really bad day, that's it. Competition level, the standard of the pilots is such that you're almost certainly not going to get back up. And we will come to it, no doubt, but my World Championships in America was exactly that situation. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But the other memory from 1976, well, first of all, my open class teammate and I generally were not team pairs flying, as we call it, like flying together in quite close physical proximity, helping each other in that way. We were up against a Polish pair who were very, very good, and they pair flew all the time. That was what they did. They were well used to it, whereas the Brits were not. But the final days are usually interesting, and this one was no less dramatic. It was a thundery type day. The weather was appalling, absolutely appalling. I thought, surely they're going to cancel the day, surely. Nope, we're going to go. All right, so we got airborne, managed to hold up, managed to climb up somehow. But my open class teammate, who's a very good pilot, was unable. And I was holding my altitude, looking at the watch, and I just radioed to him. And I said, look, I got to go, just got to go. I was in the lead. I would have liked his help, but this isn't going to work. So off I go on my own, feeling very lonely, and went out from this terrible weather conditions and looked ahead and thought, gosh, blue sky. So out into the blue sky. The conditions were not great, but it was more pleasant, that's for sure. And I'm gliding along, and suddenly I'm aware I'm not actually on my own. You know when you have that feeling? And I look off my left wingtip, and who do I see out there? But this German-registered motor glider and this TV man with a monstrous big camera on his shoulder, and he's filming me. Go away. I don't need this.
I know, but you were becoming a celebrity. You were leading the competition. I guess it was almost, inevitable.